The betting boards lit up across 73 worlds the moment they dragged the human into the grand combat sphere. I watched from my observation deck, my secondary arms twitching with anticipation as credits transferred faster than light particles through a warp gate. This was going to be good. This was going to be legendary. The human looked underwhelming, honestly. A female specimen, maybe 1.7 meters tall, built like she survived on ration packs and spite. Her designation read Kira Vex on the biometric scanner, though I doubted that was her real name. Nobody used their real name when they volunteered for the trials. Too many creditors, too many enemies, too many people who would love to know you had finally gotten yourself killed for entertainment. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored collective consciousnesses. The announcer's voice boomed through every speaker in the arena. His name was Threx, a Volthurian with a voice that could shatter glass and an ego that could fill a cargo bay. Welcome to the 500th anniversary of the Grand Combat Sphere. Today, we have a special treat that will either go down in history or go down in flames. Probably flames. Definitely flames. The crowd roared. 50,000 beings from 100 different species, all packed into the stadium like sardines in a compression chamber. I could smell the excitement, literally. The Gorthians 3 rows down were secreting their pleasure pheromones, which smelled disturbingly like burnt toast. In the red corner, weighing in at a mere 63 kilograms, from the backwater planet Earth, fighting under the name Kira Vex, we have our human challenger. Polite applause, a few laughs. Someone in the upper decks threw what looked like a protein bar wrapper. Standard reception for humans. They were new to the galactic scene, barely 50 years since first contact, and they had developed a reputation for being simultaneously aggressive and fragile, like angry glass sculptures. Beautiful to look at, fun to watch, but ultimately destined to shatter. And in the blue corner, our reigning champion, the beast that has torn through 47 consecutive challengers, the nightmare of 1,000 worlds, the ravager of Kelton Prime, the one, the only, Skrillex the Untamed. Now that got a reaction. The floor vibrated as the crowd stamped, roared, and generally lost their collective minds. I felt my wallet getting lighter just from the sympathetic nervous system response. The betting odds shifted wildly. Skrillex to win was now 1 to 50. Skrillex to win in under 30 seconds was 1 to 3. Human survives longer than 1 minute was 1 to 12,000. I put 500 credits on the human lasting 90 seconds. Call me an optimist. The containment field on the blue gate flickered, then dissolved. What emerged made my primary stomach clench, and my secondary stomach start composing my last will and testament. Skrillex was a Drenthian apex predator, standing 4 meters at the shoulder, covered in overlapping bone plates that could deflect plasma bolts. Its mouth contained 3 rows of teeth, designed to crush starship hull plating. Its claws were classified as weapons of mass destruction in 14 systems. It had killed its last opponent, a Kragoth warrior, by literally biting him in half. Lengthwise. The creature's eyes locked onto the human. It made a sound somewhere between a growl and a garbage compactor having an existential crisis. Drool, which was apparently acidic based on the smoking holes it left in the arena floor, dripped from its jaws. Kira Vex stood perfectly still, not frozen, not scared, just still, like she was waiting for something. Her hands hung loose at her sides. She wore a simple combat suit, no armor, no visible weapons. Standard issue suicide outfit. "Combatants," Threx announced with barely contained glee. "Prepare for glory, or prepare for death. Probably death." Let the 500th grand trial begin! The shield dropped. Skrillex charged immediately, because of course it did. When you weigh 3,000 kilograms and have never lost a fight, strategy is optional. The ground shook. The crowd screamed. I gripped my seat so hard I left claw marks in the polymer. The human smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a brave smile. A smile that said she knew something everyone else in this arena had somehow missed. A smile that made my tertiary brain stem start whispering that maybe, just maybe, I should have bet more credits on the human. At the last possible second, when Skrillex was close enough that I could count its teeth through my viewing screen, Kira moved. Not away. Towards. She dropped into a slide that would have made a professional athlete weep with envy, passing directly under the creature's massive bulk while it was still airborne from its leap. As she slid, her hand shot out and grabbed something from the beast's underbelly. I enhanced my viewing screen. She had latched onto one of the softer scales, the ones that flexed to allow movement. Specifically, she grabbed one right next to where the creature's primary weapon glands were located. Skrillex landed with enough force to crack the arena floor. It spun, confused, searching for its prey. Then it felt the human hanging from its belly like a particularly aggressive parasite. The creature went berserk. It thrashed, rolled, slammed itself against the arena walls hard enough to shake my observation deck 3 levels up. The crowd was going insane. Credits were changing hands so fast the betting computers were overheating. Someone near me passed out, though whether from excitement or their species' equivalent of a heart attack, I could not tell. Through it all, the human held on. I zoomed in further. She was not just holding on, she was doing something. Her free hand was pressed against the creature's hide, right over that weapon gland. Her lips were moving, but the arena audio could not pick up what she was saying over Skrillex's roaring. Then I saw it. The gland was swelling, expanding. Whatever toxin or acid or nightmare fuel the creature produced was building up inside its own body, with nowhere to go. The human had somehow blocked the release valve. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," I muttered to myself. Next to me, a Trilaxian trader named Vorn looked over. "What? What is she doing?" "She is weaponizing the thing's own biology against it." "That is impossible. The hide is too thick. The glands are internal." "Tell that to the human." Skrillex was moving slower now, its movements less coordinated. The swelling was visible even from our seats. The creature was literally poisoning itself. It stumbled, crashed into the arena wall again, this time without the same force. More desperate, more pained. Kira dropped from its belly, landing in a crouch that should have shattered her knees, but somehow did not. She rolled away as Skrillex collapsed onto its side, wheezing, twitching, its eyes rolling back in its massive skull. The arena went silent. 50,000 beings holding their collective breath. The human stood, dusted herself off, and walked calmly to where Skrillex lay, struggling to breathe. She placed one small hand on the creature's head, right between its eyes. For a moment, I thought she might show mercy, might help it somehow. Then she spoke. The audio finally picked up her voice. It was calm, almost conversational, definitely sarcastic. "You know what is funny? I have had worse first dates than this." The crowd remained silent, confused. Humans and their strange references. Kira looked up at the announcer's booth, at Threx specifically. Her voice carried across the entire arena, amplified by the same system that was supposed to broadcast her death screams. "So, question for the management. Your rules say I win if my opponent cannot continue fighting, right?" Threx seemed unable to form words. His translator made several attempts before producing, "That is, yes, that is correct." "Cool, cool, cool, cool." She patted Skralex's head like it was a somewhat disappointing pet. "So here is my question. Should I return your champion alive or shredded?" The arena went dead quiet. Not shocked quiet, not scared quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when an entire stadium of bloodthirsty spectators suddenly realizes they have severely miscalculated something fundamental about reality. I checked the betting boards. They had frozen, crashed. Someone would need to restart the entire system because the computers literally could not process what they were witnessing. Skralex made a gurgling sound. The human pressed her hand down slightly, and the creature went very still. Not dead. Just very, very aware of how close to dead it was. "I am waiting," Kira said, her voice pleasant, conversational, like she was asking whether someone wanted sugar in their coffee. "Alive and humiliated? Or shredded into party confetti? I am good, either way. Honestly, after the week I have had, either option sounds therapeutic." Threx found his voice, though it cracked like a teenage Voltharian going through puberty. The rules state that if a combatant yields, they may be spared at the victor's discretion. Does it look like this thing can yield? I am pretty sure it just used up its entire vocabulary, screaming and trying to eat me. Fair point. Furthermore, the human continued, apparently just getting started, your promotional material said this was a fight to the death. Your exact words were, "Watch as champions clash in mortal combat until only one survives." That was the advertisement. That was what you sold tickets for. So which is it? Are your rules real, or is your marketing real? Because I am getting mixed messages here. I could see Threx frantically consulting with someone off camera. Probably lawyers. Definitely lawyers. The legal implications of a human pointing out contradictions in your gladiatorial combat regulations in front of 50,000 witnesses and live broadcasting across the sector were substantial. "The champion," Threx finally said, his voice tight, "may be returned alive, at your discretion. And if I choose the other option, that is also permitted, under subsection 43 of the combat regulations." Kira nodded slowly, like she was considering her options while shopping for furniture. "What is the prize for winning?" 1,000,000 credits, a title, and the right to challenge at the Grand Master level. That is it? I risked my life for 1,000,000 credits and a fancy name? She laughed, and it was not a happy sound. "Lady, I owe more than that to a loan shark on Station 12. Do you know what happens when you owe money to Vrax the Merciless? Nothing good. Nothing that involves all my original limbs." The crowd was starting to recover. Murmurs, whispers. The Gorthians had stopped secreting pleasure pheromones and started secreting fear pheromones, which smelled like burnt toast soaked in vinegar. Much worse. "So here is what is going to happen," the human said, addressing the entire arena now. "I am going to let this overgrown lizard live. Not because I am merciful, not because I am kind, but because I want everyone watching to understand something very important." She released Skralex's head and stood up straight. The creature did not move, barely breathed. It knew. We humans, we just got here. We are new. We are small. We seem fragile. And every single one of you looked at me and thought, easy kill, quick credits, entertaining death. Am I right? Silence answered her. The kind of silence that sounds like yes. So let this thing live. Let it tell other things. Let the word spread. Because the next time someone thinks a human is easy prey, I want them to remember this moment. I want them to remember that the only reason Skrillex the Untamed is still breathing is because I decided to let it breathe. She walked toward the exit, stepping over the still twitching form of the champion. At the gate, she paused and looked back. Oh, and Threx? You might want to check subsection 43 of your combat regulations more carefully. It also says the victor inherits all existing contracts and obligations of a defeated champion, which means I now own Skrillex's 23% stake in this arena, plus all endorsement deals, plus the breeding rights to its gene line. She grinned. I did my homework. Did you? The legal team's collective groan was audible even from my seat. Vorn turned to me, his sensory appendages quivering. Did she just win the fight and take over part of the arena's ownership? I think she did. I think she very much did. That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. That is going to make her very rich and very many enemies. Yes. Down in the arena, medical teams were rushing to tend to Skrillex. The human was being escorted out by security, but not like a prisoner. More like they were terrified of what she might do if they touched her wrong. The betting boards finally rebooted. The final odds flashed across every screen in the stadium. Human victory. 1 to 12,000. Actual payout for anyone who had bet on Kira. Astronomical. I looked at my ticket. 500 credits on the human lasting 90 seconds. She had lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I had won, let me see, carry the 2. Approximately enough to buy a small moon. Or at least a large moon-sized debt forgiveness from Vrax the Merciless. Wait, Vrax the Merciless. The human had mentioned owing money to Vrax the Merciless. I pulled up the station's criminal database on my personal display. Cross-referenced known associates of Vrax. Found a list of people who owed him money. Searched for Kira Vex. No results. Searched for human debtors. One result. Name, classified. Amount owed, 2 million credits. Status, marked for collection. Last known location, Grand Combat Sphere. I started laughing. Could not help myself. The human had not come here for glory. She had not come here for fame. She had come here to win enough money and leverage to get a notorious crime lord off her back. And she had done it by reading the fine print better than the arena's entire legal department. Vorn, I said, still chuckling. I think we just witnessed the beginning of something either wonderful or terrible. Which one? Yes. 3 hours after the fight, I found myself in the most unlikely place imaginable. Sitting across from Kira Vex in a dingy bar called the Neutron's Last Gulp, watching her negotiate with representatives from 6 different fight promoters, 2 entertainment networks, and 1 very nervous attorney from the Grand Combat Sphere's parent corporation. How did I get here? Excellent question. Mostly curiosity. Partly stupidity. Definitely the fact that I had won enough credits to afford being stupid for at least a month. Let me get this straight, Kira said, pointing at the Helverian promoter with what remained of her third drink. You want me to fight 12 matches across 5 systems, take a 60-40 split on merchandise, and sign away my hologram rights for 7 years? The promoter, a bulbous creature named Kellex, nodded enthusiastically. Standard contract for rising stars. Very generous. Many beings would kill for such opportunity. Many beings are killing for opportunities, Kellex. That is literally the business model. How about this instead? I fight 6 matches. Locations of my choosing. 70-30 split in my favor. Hologram rights expire after 2 years, and you throw in a personal transport vessel with Class 3 shields and a hyperdrive that does not sound like it is crying every time I jump systems. Kelix's skin changed from optimistic purple to negotiating orange. Impossible. The margins, the logistics, the fact that every being with a credit account just watched me make your current champion look like a training dummy? Yeah, terrible for business, I bet. I am sure viewership numbers are plummeting as we speak. I checked my personal display. Arena footage of the fight had been viewed 800 million times in the last 3 hours. Merchandise sales were up 4,000%. Someone was selling replica blocking gloves, claiming to use authentic human technique. They cost 900 credits and did absolutely nothing. The Helverian's color shifted to conciliatory yellow. Perhaps we could discuss revised terms. Perhaps you could discuss them with my new legal representative while I finish drinking. She gestured at the nervous attorney, a Prelian named Jax, who looked like he wanted to dissolve into his component molecules. Jax here is very good at reading fine print. Aren't you, Jax? Yes. But technically, I represent the arena, and there is a conflict of interest. You represented the arena. Past tense. Check your employment contract. Subsection 91. When ownership stake changes hands, legal counsel may choose to renegotiate representation. I am offering you triple your current salary, full medical, and a guarantee that I will not accidentally poison you with your own biology. Interested? Jax looked at the arena's corporate representative, a Tellurian named Moss, who was turning an unflattering shade of green. Moss said nothing. Smart choice. I accept your offer, Jax said quietly. Kira raised her glass. Excellent. First order of business. Find out exactly how much my 23% stake is worth and whether I can leverage it to buy out more shares. Second order, sue whoever designed that ridiculous promotional material for false advertising. Third order, get me out of this meeting because these people are boring me. She stood, drained her drink, and walked toward the exit. Everyone at the table sat frozen, uncertain whether they had just been dismissed or insulted, or both. Definitely both. I followed her outside because apparently I had decided today was the day I made every questionable choice available to me. That was impressively ruthless, I called out. She turned, sized me up with eyes that missed nothing. You were sitting 3 rows from the front, Section 12, Seat 47. Xeranthian species, probably merchant class based on your clothing, definitely gambler based on how hard you were gripping your betting tablet. You put money on me. Not much, but enough to matter. How did you? I memorized every face in the first 20 rows before the fight started. Know your audience. Know who wants you dead. Know who might want you alive. Basic survival. Who are you and what do you want? Direct, efficient, mildly terrifying. I liked her already. Name is Trell, merchant, as you guessed. I deal in information, mostly. Connections, introductions. I know people who know people who know people who should never be in the same room together. Sounds sketchy. Extremely. I am very good at it. She studied me for another moment, then nodded. Walk with me. I have a meeting in 20 minutes with someone who definitely wants me dead. And I could use a witness who has motivation to keep me alive. You still have your winning ticket, right? I do. But what does... If I die, the fight gets invalidated. Suspicious circumstances. All bets get refunded. You lose your winnings, so you have a financial interest in my continued existence. That is the kind of motivation I trust. Hard to argue with that logic. Also hard to argue with someone who had recently proven they could weaponize a 4-meter murder machine against itself. We walked through the station's commercial district, past vendors selling everything from memory crystals to what I was fairly certain were illegal bioweapons. The crowd parted around Kira like she was radioactive. Word traveled fast. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Docking Bay 773, meeting Vrax the Merciless." "You know him?" "I know of him. Nobody actually knows him and lives long enough to brag about it." "Wait, the Vrax the Merciless? The one you owe 2 million credits?" "Owed, past tense. I just won 1 million from the arena. Plus, I own 23% of their most profitable operation. Plus, I have 6 fight promoters bidding for my contract. My net worth increased substantially in the last 4 hours. But Vrax does not know that yet." "So you are going to pay him?" "I am going to negotiate." "You cannot negotiate with Vrax the Merciless. His name is literally about being merciless. That is his brand. That is his whole thing." She smiled. Same smile from the arena. The one that said she knew something nobody else did. "Trell, every being in this galaxy has something they want more than credits. Vrax wants something too. I just need to figure out what it is and offer it to him before he decides killing me sends a better message than accepting payment. And if you are wrong, then you get to watch me die, which would be entertaining, and my betting ticket becomes worthless, which would be unfortunate for you. So maybe help me not be wrong?" "Fair point." Again. Docking Bay 773 was exactly as welcoming as it sounded. Dim lighting, suspicious stains on the floor. The kind of place where people came to either leave quickly or stop existing. Several large beings with larger weapons stood guard outside a private yacht that probably cost more than my entire genetic line would earn across 10 generations. "Kira Vex," one of the guards rumbled. "You are expected. Your friend is not." "He is my accountant. We are discussing financial matters. He comes or I leave." The guard considered this, consulted via comm, nodded reluctantly. Inside the yacht, Vrax the Merciless waited. He was smaller than I expected. Barely 2 meters tall, almost human-sized actually, covered in scales that shifted colors like oil on water. His eyes were completely black. No pupils, no iris, just void staring out from a reptilian face. "Miss Vex," he said, his voice surprisingly pleasant. "I watched your fight. Quite entertaining. Quite profitable for many beings. Quite surprising that you are still alive." "Surprising seems to be my specialty lately." "Indeed. You owe me 2 million credits. You have, what, 1 million from your recent victory? That leaves you somewhat short." "Actually, I wanted to discuss restructuring my debt." Every guard in the room tensed. One does not restructure debt with Vrax the Merciless. One pays or one dies. Sometimes both. Vrax tilted his head. "Restructuring. How novel. Continue." "I owe you 2 million. I can pay you 1 million today. But instead of paying the second million over time with interest that would bankrupt me, I propose a trade. Something you want more than credits." "Ambitious. What could you possibly offer me?" "Information. Connections. Access." She leaned forward. "I now own part of the Grand Combat Sphere. I have 6 promoters fighting over my contract. I have connections across multiple systems. And those connections are about to expand rapidly because everyone wants to either hire me or kill me. Mostly both. That makes me valuable. Or it makes you dangerous. It makes me useful. You run protection, smuggling, information brokering, and about 40 other illegal operations across this sector. I can feed you information from the inside, tell you which fighters are actually good versus which ones are promoted garbage, tell you which promoters are skimming credits, tell you where security is weakest, at which venues. I can be your inside source in an industry worth billions." Vrax was silent. The guards were silent. I was definitely silent, because breathing seemed like the maximum activity I could safely manage. "Why would I trust you?" Brax finally asked. "Because if I betray you, you kill me. Simple, clean, motivating. But if I deliver, you get information worth far more than 2 million credits, and I get to keep existing. Mutually beneficial arrangement. You assume I need information. Everyone needs information. Information is how you knew I would be at the arena today. Information is how you knew I was desperate enough to fight. Information is how you stay ahead of your competitors and your enemies. I am offering you a source inside the fight industry that you do not currently have." Brax stood, walked to a viewing port, looked out at the station beyond. His scales shifted from oil slick to deep purple. "Thinking colors," I guessed. 1 million credits today," he said slowly. "Plus 10% of your fight earnings for the next 2 years. Plus information as requested. In exchange, your remaining debt is cleared, and you gain my protection. Anyone who moves against you moves against me. 5% of fight earnings. 8%. 6%. And I throw in 1 free consultation per month where you can ask me anything about the fight industry that I have learned. 7%. 2 consultations. Final offer." Kira stood, walked over, extended her hand. Human greeting gesture. Sign of agreement. Brax looked at her hand like it might explode. Then, surprisingly, he took it. "You are either brilliant or suicidal," he said. "I have been told those are not mutually exclusive." Credits transferred. Contracts signed digitally. I witnessed everything, my role as accountant suddenly becoming very real and very legally binding. As we left the yacht, I finally found my voice. "You just made a deal with the most dangerous crime lord in 4 systems. I just made a deal that keeps me alive and gives me protection while I build my empire. Different perspective. Empire? You won 1 fight. Every empire starts somewhere, Trell. Caesar started with 1 legion. Genghis Khan started with 1 tribe. I started by not getting eaten by an overgrown lizard. Now I have resources, protection, and momentum. The question is, do you want to be part of what comes next, or do you want to go back to being a mid-level information broker?" She had a point. Several points. All of them sharp. What exactly would being part of your empire entail? I need someone who knows the sector. Someone who can make connections. Someone who can tell me who to trust and who to avoid. Someone who has a vested interest in my success, because if I fail, a lot of dangerous people are going to be very upset with everyone involved. "So you want me to be your advisor?" "I want you to be my partner. 20% of whatever I build. Full share in decisions. Actual stake in outcomes. Interested?" I thought about my current life. Decent credits. Boring work. No real excitement except when I made bad bets on gladiatorial combat. I thought about my possible future life. Unknown credits. Dangerous work. Constant excitement. Most of it probably life-threatening. "You are going to get me killed," I said. "Probably. But you will die interesting instead of bored. When you put it that way, yes, I am in." We shook hands. Human gesture. Felt appropriate given the circumstances. "Excellent. First order of business. We need to figure out what to do with my share of Skrillex. Apparently, breeding rights to Drenthian apex predators are complicated." "Wait, you are actually keeping those?" "I own them. Might as well profit from them. I hear wealthy collectors pay millions for guaranteed aggressive genetics. We could corner the market on combat creatures." "That is actually brilliant. Horrible, but Brilliant. That is going on my business cards. Kira Vex. Horrible, but brilliant. 3 months later, I sat in a much nicer office, watching fight statistics scroll across multiple screens. Kira had won 4 more matches, each one more spectacular than the last. Her reputation had gone from lucky human to genuinely terrifying to please do not make her angry. The arena's viewership had tripled. Her merchandise line was outselling champions who had been famous for decades. The breeding program for Skrelix's genetics was generating more credits than some planetary economies. And through it all, she kept her deal with Vrax, feeding him information that kept him ahead of his rivals while staying just clean enough that nobody could prove she was working with him. She walked into the office, threw herself into a chair. I am exhausted. Do you know how hard it is to look terrifying when you are 1.7 meters tall and weigh less than most species' children? You manage. I manage because beings are terrible at risk assessment. They see what I did once and assume I can do it again. Classic mistake. Never let them see you struggle. Can you do it again? She grinned. Absolutely not. That thing with Skrelix was 1 part skill, 2 parts luck, and 3 parts the creature being dumb enough to have an exploitable weakness. Next opponent might actually kill me. Comforting. Which is why I am retiring from active fighting after my contract obligations are met. 6 fights total. 4 down, 2 to go. Then I transition to full ownership and promotion. Let other beings risk their lives while I collect percentages. Smart. I learned from the best. Vrax does not fight his own battles. He pays people to fight for him. Why should I be different? She had a point. She always had a point. The door opened. Jax entered, carrying a data pad and looking far less nervous than when we first met him. Good news! The buyout negotiations for additional arena shares went through. You now own 41%, largest single shareholder. Kira smiled. Excellent. Start drafting proposals for rule changes. I want better safety protocols, higher pay for lower-tier fighters, and mandatory medical coverage. Also, ban that ridiculous promotional language about mortal combat. Sounds cheap. These changes will cost millions in implementation. These changes will save lives and make us look responsible. Good publicity is worth millions. Make it happen. Jax nodded and left. Kira looked at me. What? She asked. Nothing. Just wondering when you stopped being someone running from debt and started being someone who cares about fighter safety. I always cared. I just also cared about not dying. Now that I am not actively dying, I have time to care about other things. Progress. Outside the window, the Grand Combat Sphere rotated slowly, its lights visible across half the station. Inside, fighters prepared for matches. Spectators placed bets. Promoters counted credits. And somewhere in the lower levels, Skrelix recovered in a luxury habitat, completely unaware that its defeat had launched an empire. You know what the best part is? Kira said, staring at the arena. Everyone thought I was prey. Easy target, fragile human. They were so busy underestimating me that they never saw the trap until it closed. That is the real trick, Trell. Not being the strongest, not being the fastest. Being the one everyone underestimates until it is too late. And now? Now nobody underestimates me, which means I need to be smarter, faster, better. Expectations changed, so I change too. Adapt or die. That is not just a human saying. That is the universe's only rule. She stood, stretched, looked at me with that same smile from the arena. The one that said she knew something nobody else did. Ready for round 2? She asked. Of what? Everything. We built an empire from one fight and one lucky break. Imagine what we can do with 2 fights and actual planning." I laughed, could not help it. 3 months ago, I was a bored merchant making bad bets. Now I was partner in an entertainment empire, advisor to someone who terrified crime lords, and apparently about to help plan whatever insanity came next. "You are going to get me killed," I said again. "Probably," she agreed. "But you will die interesting." Hard to argue with that.